Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristel van den Bergh. I'm the Managing Director of the Prins Albert Fund. I'm not here alone today. I have my colleague Anneke de Necker, who is here as well. And we're super happy to see you all here. So many have showed up. And I'm really excited, actually, tonight. Why? Because it's going to be an evening where we're going to talk about opportunities. I think it's now exactly 8 years ago I was standing where you're standing, and little did I know that showing up to an info session would give that kind of change of direction in my life. It brought me to China, it brought me to the technology world where I worked for 8 years, and then it brought me actually back to the same fund. So kudos to you, you showed up. That's the first step in this journey. So what are we going to talk about this evening? First of all, I will explain what the Prins Albert Fund is about. You see PAF, because that's the acronym we use. Otherwise, we're spending the whole evening saying that word. And then we will have some alumni who will share their stories, their personal stories with you. We're lucky to have 14 of them here tonight, and Joke and Piet kindly accepted to really share their stories, after which you can ask all of the questions you have for them. And afterwards, we will connect over some food and drinks where you can, again, keep asking the question you want to ask. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I'm going to explain 3 things. So what is the fund all about? Is it for you? Are you eligible, and how can you get selected? How can you apply? And what will happen once you get the grant, once you are selected? So first of all, the Prins Albert Fund was founded now almost 40 years ago. And since its inception, our double mission is still the same. We want to help Belgium's top talent kickstart their international career and really grow as leaders. At the same time, we want to help Belgian companies with their international expansion and development. So practically, how do we do that? We bring the top talent together with the Belgian companies over a unique leadership development program. The Belgian talent gets a grant of €27,500. They can conduct a high-impact strategic project for a company of choice in a country of choice, as long as it's outside of Western Europe. The companies, well, they get access to top talent like yourself. Their business, of course, will be accelerated thanks to the assignment, and they don't have to pay the salary costs because you guys are getting a grant, but they have to provide in your cost of living, right? So the flight tickets, the apartment, and all of that. And that's actually how we've been able to make a double impact since 1984. Just to give you 2 very concrete examples of our freshly selected candidates, this is Iman Benamar. She was working for IBM as an innovation consultant for many years, and now she's decided to use her PAF grant to work for Turbulent. It's a hydropower company, and she will now empower remote communities via affordable and clean energy and help scale Turbulent's business in East Africa. I don't know if you can read it, but this is the post that she put on LinkedIn, and she is obviously extremely excited about this beautiful opportunity. She will be based in Kigali in Rwanda. Her colleague, Nicolas Evenepoel, he worked for McKinsey before. He's not doing a business development project. He became a sustainability manager for Boortmalt, a very large malting company. Now, Boortmalt is very serious about keeping global warming low and reducing their carbon footprint between 50% and 100% by 2030. This means there's a lot of sustainability initiatives, and Nicolas will be leading all of them from Sydney in Australia. What do those 2 projects have in common? Well, they both really took on a serious professional challenge, a new role in a changing industry, and they're relocating to a new country and a new culture. It's exactly those set of requirements, that setting, that what makes Prins Albert's Fund so interesting, because you will inevitably really grow as a person and grow as a professional. 40 years later, we have empowered 500 candidates, each one having their unique story. As you can see here on the slide, we almost cover every geography, and it's really up to the candidate to choose where they're going. Also, in terms of companies, we have now empowered more than 300 businesses, both large and small. Every year, there's new companies submitting a project, but we also have quite some companies which keep coming back because of they're very satisfied, let's say, with the top talent that they have and the results on their project. So I hope that by now you are very excited with everything I've said. And then the question is, are you eligible? Can you participate? I think this is a really, really important slide. So, first of all, you need to be a Belgian citizen or domiciled in Belgium for at least 5 years. You need to be maximum 30 years old on the 1st of January 2023, which means you need to be born after 1st of January 1993. A master's degree is a third requirement, and here it's important. Many of our PAF candidates have studied business, but it's not a requirement. We also have people who have studied archaeology, architecture, law, so it really doesn't matter as long as it's a master's degree. Then you need to have a keen interest in business. That's important. Minimum 2 years of professional experience by September 2023. So that's by the time you would leave for your project. I put a little asterisk there because employment, professional experience, is not a summer internship. You need to be listed on a payroll of an organization to really count as professional experience. And then you need to be fluent in English. The whole selection process will be also in English. You will probably be conducting your project in English. So that's crucial as well. So voilà, this is really important for yourself to take into account. So if you're eligible, that's great news. You can start this selection process. And there's 2 big steps. The first one is an online application. Now, it's already open. The call for applications is open until the 10th of January. That's reachable via the website of the KWS. Just average numbers, but imagine we have 200 of them coming in. Then we will do a pre-selection of 75. So each file will be scored by 4 jury members. And sadly, at this stage, we cannot give feedback if you're not selected, just so you know, that's important. Huh? Imagine you are selected, you go through to the next round, which is a live jury interview on March 17th in Brussels. You will get 1 hour to prepare a small business case, then you will have 25 minutes with the jury, and that same day, we will select the 30 winning candidates. Yeah, so we go from 75 to 30. The ones that are selected, yeah, great, you will start a journey. But for the ones that were not selected, at this stage, you do get feedback. And we really ask the jury to write it down. And if the years later you're still within the criteria, you can apply again. This is really important. It's not the first time we have a candidate trying 2 times and getting in the 3rd time. So don't get discouraged if the first time doesn't work. All right? So let's dive a bit deeper in each of these 2 steps. The online applications. You can now, tomorrow, if you want, already download this question sheet. I put a thinker there because it's important to really think these questions through. It's a great exercise. It's to get clarity about where you want to go, what you want to do. And also, it's a reference point for the jury. Once you meet the jury, they only have your file in front of them, and they will refer back to it. So I think it's really important to start on time if you want to have a good chance in participating. Then there's the jury day. Of course, you will be entering a room. There will be sitting 6 to 7 jury members. And the first thing I want to say is the jury is your friend. It can be a bit overwhelming, but in the end, the jury is a mix of alumni, of leaders from all kinds of sectors, and they really want you to succeed. I think that's important to know. You will only have 25 minutes, of which there's 10 minutes the small business case. But as you can see, the most important part is the interview. Yeah, and the interview is about you as a person. This is what the jury will assess. 4 things. Your personality. Are you driven? Are you entrepreneurial? How can you convince the jury? How open-minded are you? Are you a team player? How mature are you? No, there's a lot of things, but obviously this relates also back to the questions and the way you answered them in your application file. Yeah. Past achievements. We're not going to lie about it, and PAF is also looking for people who really like to get results. That's an essence of PAF, also because that's what you want to do with your assignment, right? Only that success doesn't only come from studies and work, which is obviously important, but if you have done youth activities, sports or voluntary work, please emphasize that, and also in your files. I think that is as important sometimes. Of course, also resilience, ability to learn from your mistakes, which is an essential part of leadership. Then your motivation about PAF, about international business, about potential project, about living abroad. If you're enthusiastic, bring that enthusiasm to the jury. I think that is really, really important. That's what they often remember. Not what you say, but what you exude. And an impact, right? Which impact will you make with your project, your future projects? What will it do with your career? A lot of puffers, they use the grant to really switch a career, to enter an industry they haven't been able to enter otherwise. So that's the impact. And how will you contribute to society at large? A couple of tips. Well, tips, it's mostly, when you're preparing for such a thing, we all have a gremlin in our mind, which starts to say a lot of things. But I haven't identified a PAF project yet, so I can't apply, right? That's not true. You really don't need to. You'll see later, people often only get the project after they get the grant, because then the opportunity is concrete. But think about your intentions. What if I would get the grant? Would I more go for the food sector? Would I want to use it to switch careers? So think about that. But you don't need to be clear on that first point. But my background is very different. If I look on the website, I don't recognize myself. They've all studied business. That's not true. It's really good to have a different background. Every PAF candidate is unique, but focus on your story. Our jury has a very good nose for authenticity, right? So that's what you want to see. Bring yourself. Even if sometimes there's vulnerability inside, it's really, really good. And thirdly, but what if I fail? All those efforts. Yeah, but what if you learn, right? You really have nothing to lose. I think filling in such an application already might tell you, you know what, actually I don't want to do a PAF. This is really what I want to do. That's only just to win. So some couple of tips that are my personal tips, and the alumni will give you many more later on. So getting selected is only half of the story. That's, of course, an amazing thing. But after that, there's 3 steps of compulsory steps that you have to go through before you can actually depart on your mission. The first one is a leadership training. That's a mandatory leadership training together with your cohort. Then there's a speed dating with the companies. And then there's a whole process of finding that project. Let's look at every one of those steps a bit more in detail. So the mandatory leadership training, it's 2 days. Here you can see the cohort, which was together that day. And there's a couple of topics that will be treated, and intercultural communication, really developing leadership skills, and you can really, really connect with your cohort. And I put some stars there because every report I read of the PAFers, they all say this was an extremely insightful training, and they really were able to use all of those insights while they were abroad. We want to prepare you to succeed, and it will be challenging, and that's why this training is mandatory. A speed dating event, so this is basically where you go and you meet several companies which have submitted a PAF project. That's really fun because you can already get some concrete opportunities. Just know that you're not obliged to select that project, but you are obliged to be there on that date and participate. Around 50% of the candidates which receive the grant chooses a project from the list. What do we mean with the list? Well, it's those projects that were submitted by companies that have been working with us sometimes for many years, sometimes the first time. And that's great. It looks like that. There's a project description. What are we expecting of the candidate? And so you see, at that stage, things get very concrete. And 50% of them choose to go that route. Another 50% starts from a blank canvas. They say, okay, you know what? I really want to shape this opportunity to what I want. Have something very concrete in mind. Of course, they need to stay within the criteria. So it needs to be a Belgian company, go outside of the EU for 12 months, entrepreneurial, related to business or management, and related to the SDGs you care about. This is an example of my own PAF project. So I really thought, okay, what kind of project role what do I want to do? And for me, it was strategic business development. I really wanted to launch something. I looked at my 2 passions. Back then it was technology and music. So I was like, okay, this is something. And the country, I was very convinced it would be Latin America. And then the company shortlist, I was browsing, trying to find out. And so spoiler alert, I chose Materialize, where I worked for 8 years later on, so it really launched my career. But I never got to Latin America. I was sent to Shanghai. And that was funny because I was so convinced about that. That's a criteria, I'm going to Latin America. And in this whole process, you learn to see which factors are real non-negotiables for yourself and which one you should actually learn to relax a bit more to make the most out of this opportunity, right? And here's also Jean-Roger de Band, who was my alumni mentor. We really make sure that you have a good mentor from the PAF, from the company, so that you also have access to support on this entire journey. So basically, it's a long journey, right? It's 10 to 14 months before you even depart, and then there's another 12 months. So it requires some commitment to this process. But you're not alone. There is support during this onboarding. The company has a couple of obligations, contractual obligations, and that is, of course, first and foremost, you need a challenging and fulfilling project, right? You will also have a company mentor. You could see that a bit as a functional manager in the company, really following your project. And they need to provide support for your whole visa process, which can be really sometimes quite complicated. And then, of course, there's a financial side. They need to pay for your housing costs, your flight costs, mission-related costs, and an admin fee to the Prince Albert Fund. And we, so when I say we, I mean mostly myself and Anneke. I don't know where she is. But she's really a great support to all the candidates in the onboarding. When you're struggling, what I want to do, we're there. Also the alumni mentor, as I mentioned, and of course the whole admin support to get your contracts ready. That's also a part of our process. Now, I'm always talking about opportunities, but opportunities and making choices has implications and sometimes some consequences, and I want you to be aware about the consequences of becoming a PAFer. If you take the grant, you're a student again. You're not a professional. This means no pension and no vacation credit. Yeah? The grant you get is tax-free. But this is important because some people see that as a risk. Like I'm going to be a student again, and what if I don't find a job? So consider these things, but keep residence in Belgium so that you can keep benefiting from a social security. And of course, we'll provide an additional health insurance, an international health insurance when you move abroad. But this is the most important implication. That I feel that sometimes PAFers with whom I work don't even realize when they signed up for it, so please take that into account. And then it's, of course, an adventure. Finding a project takes time. I already mentioned there's no such a thing as an ideal project. You need to learn how to be flexible. I think that's already part of the leadership growth, is making concessions. Managing dual careers. There will be a period where you're still with your former employer, and actually you're already planning for your future trip, but you don't know when you're going to leave. So this is quite a tricky situation to manage. And that's important. Also, this one is maybe the most tricky one. Managing your personal relationship with your partner, your family. What if you get selected and you want to go to Africa, but your partner doesn't want to come along or wants to come along but can't find a job? So this is all consequences you think about up front. And also, as I said, visa is tricky. It's never unsurmountable, but sometimes it can be a bit frustrating. And finally, if you drop the grant after selection, because, for example, your partner doesn't want to come along, it cannot be given to someone else, right? So think about that. If you already see a showstopper today, then we would appreciate you actually not to apply. Yeah? But if you're by this time extremely excited about what I've said so far, and you're like, oh my God, I'm really ready to make my mark on that map. I want to join the PAF community. I want to join the tribe. And I'm really ready to take my personal development and my professional development to the next level. Yeah, then of course, I do encourage you to apply. And mark these dates in your agenda. This will be put online, so no worries. But they are carved in stone. There is no flexibility on any of these dates, right? So I mean, it would be a pity, right, that you're really motivated and you miss it because you didn't take the date into account. And again, show up, keep showing up, bring your best and leave the rest. That's what we say. And I'm quite sure that just as it was for me, you will get, if you get the grant, there will be amazing twists and turns in your life, in your career, and it's really an amazing adventure, and I hope you will enjoy it as I did. All right, so that was my part of the presentation tonight. As I mentioned, now we want to move to the second phase of tonight and invite the alumni to share their stories with you. And so, as a next step, we will listen to Joke's story, and afterwards, during the Q&A, of course, our alumni are here. We can answer the questions together again. So, Joke, the floor is yours. Here's the clicker.
Thank you. Okay, so I can already start off with saying my name is Joanna, because in English, Joke just doesn't work very well. I think everyone who speaks Flemish will understand that. I'm a pre-COVID alumni, so you won't be seeing any of those stories coming up. I wanted to share my background just really quickly. I'm not going to go through my resume, but I wanted to show that you don't need an MBA or something like that, because I was also a little bit worried about that. I didn't have any experience in the private sector. I didn't study economics or anything like that. It did help that I worked in Peru for a couple of years, but it's really about putting your assets in your application, and I'm sure you will all have plentiful. I was working as a consultant in market research, and I was thinking, you know what, maybe I should change what I'm doing, because I keep on talking to bosses and you share a vision and you think, wow, I want to do that. I want to work on this project or whatever. And once you start working somewhere, you realize, oh, but they're talking about something in 5 to 10 years. And I was more like 5 to 10 weeks. Oh, okay, months. Let's be realistic. And so I kind of wanted to prove, not really to them, but to myself, that I could do that I could manage that. And seeing my background, I had always been a teacher or a consultant or advising other people how to do certain things. And I kind of thought that was strange. I should prove myself first and show that I was up for the task. Now, so I was looking for an opportunity somewhere around New Year's, New Year's resolutions. And I thought, well, what to do? So I asked Google. I typed in some keywords, and Prince Albert Fund came up. And the fun thing is, you actually get a list of everyone who's ever done PUF. And so for those 40 years, I literally did not know anyone who had done PUF. So I can only say thank you, Google. That was really nice. I had about a week or two for the PUF application. And so for me, it was a just do it mentality. I really appreciated the fact that you get the selection criteria in advance, because you can really go through your application and weigh every word. I'm not the most concise person. I will do my best tonight. But it was really, for me, just marking everything. Does this contribute to something that they're selecting on? If it's not, bye. Okay. So that was, for me, one of the main things I remember for my PUF application. I obviously got selected. And I do also want to mention the training, because I really still use it till this day. So it is really a really good training. And then perhaps the most interesting part for you all, the matchmaking. For me, I tried both ways, so contacting companies and looking at the proposals they had. And really now, so many years later, I realize going to companies for me was perhaps not the best way, because I didn't have a clear vision which company or which industry or whatever, something like that. And reading those proposals really did help me get an understanding of that and selecting. And I had a short list at one point. I had a project that I could do with the perfect country. I had a project that had the perfect role, where I could work with a team locally, that I really wanted to do that. And I had one which I thought, that's really the industry that I want to work in. Of course, I did not find that all in one project, so I had to pick. I went for the perfect role, and I do have to say I grew to like India, and I definitely grew to like the sector that I was working in, so I'm really, really happy with my choice. So yeah, flexibility, you're right. What was my role? What wasn't my role is perhaps a better question. I will mention what's not on there, and it's direct sales. So I was a business development manager, but I didn't do any sales in the sense that the products that we were selling have a really long buying cycle of a half a year, 2 years longer. So for a 1-year puff project, that's not really useful. And just to show that business development is so much more than sales. I had a dual outcome for my puff project. That was a measurable 5-year roadmap in terms of market development and to build a loyal and future-proof LVD India team, so the local team there. And the company itself, they saw that as more from 2 to 7 years from now, we will see the impact from that puff project. And I'm really glad to say that they saw some results earlier on, but they were definitely thinking long-term with this type of project. And I'm just going to briefly explain the company. I'm not going to go in detail because I really think I'm the only puffer who ever went out for this industry. So sheet metal machinery market is really big machines. I will show you some pictures later. But they're a B2B company. They had never done a puff project before, so I was their first candidate. They do everything in research and development, production, everything, and they're about 1,500 employees. In India, they were already there for a longer time, but actually right before I went out, they had some management changes, so in India, but at a higher level there. There were about 20 or 25, 30 people present. And for me at that time, it was a bit of a shift to learn that about 50% worked in headquarters in Bangalore, where I was, and the other half of the people were spread out around the country. Now, of course, with all the working from home and all that, you might be more used to it than I was back then, but that was an interesting way of working. So some pictures. And this was actually taken the first week that I was doing my training in Belgium in headquarters. I'm not very keen on being on pictures, but someone was like, oh, you want me to take your pictures? And I was like, okay, sure. Apparently that was a customer. And it was really a thing in the showroom in Belgium, but also in India. Customers would really make a field trip out of it. So I had to refurbish the showroom in India. So that was really good for me to know that and how to handle that, how to tackle that. So you can see it's a pretty big work refurbishing a showroom with big machines. It's not the same if you have a smaller product. So that was nice to do and thought it looked nice. And I strategically put a picture over myself. And then I have some pictures here from our engineers in India working on the machines. The reason why we took those pictures is because, well, I was responsible for marketing and HR in India, a country with over 1 billion people living there. And we only had pictures with Belgian employees or American employees. And it's kind of awkward when you're hiring someone and they can't recognize themselves. So they look very serious on these pictures now, but we had a lot of fun with the photographer that day. So I'm really glad they did that. And customers really also talked to them when they came to their company fixing a machine. They were like, oh, I saw your picture. So it was really, really cool. And diving into my old pictures, I also found our Eiffel Tower that we built. So I organized a couple of events there, and we had a very high-level event, and we wanted a centerpiece. And so in Belgium, there was a big Eiffel Tower, and we thought we can make a small one with the machines that we have in our showroom. And so our engineers and really everyone, because in that picture there's also our finance officer is there, our handyman is in there, they all just got together and like, oh, fun, let's do this. And I was thinking, building an Eiffel Tower, or at least that one, is kind of like a puff project. Because, well, it has plans. You have to submit a plan beforehand to puff, you have to rethink it somewhere midway, you have to again think about it afterwards or when you're giving a presentation like this. And you have a fallback, even though it doesn't always seem like that. And even when you're buried in 1 million pieces, there is structure. You might not think it, but there really is. You got a couple of stages that you have to go through, and it's teamwork. And you might say that's easy for you to say, you had a team in India, but even my company coach, my alumni coach, the colleagues in Belgium, the PUF network, they really are there for you. Even when, like in my case, I was there somewhere 6 months, and it's India, a lot of bureaucracy. So I had to go get some papers fixed. And all of a sudden, I had a big red stamp all across my visa. Ma'am, you have 5 days to leave the country. What? I somehow negotiated into 10 days. I don't know how I did that. But I do have to say, I called the company, but they weren't available. And my company coach immediately picked up the phone. This is an odd hour for her to call. What's wrong? So he immediately got everything fixed on Belgian side, and took about a week or two. I had to go back to Belgium and come back. So it wasn't a big problem, but I can tell you at the moment, you're kind of freaking out. So that's nice to have someone to fall back on. And yeah, it's really something you have to take a step back from, also your PUF project. Take a step back to really admire it. It also has other people really looking up, because you're in it, you're busy with it, you don't really think about it. But it really is a piece of art, and I'm sure yours will be as well. But it's a piece of art because it has a lot of challenges, and they can say, you know, there are opportunities in disguise, and you will definitely say that afterwards. In the moment itself, you might be a little bit less optimistic, but you really grow a problem-solving nature. So small things, you know, they won't bother you anymore. And I just wanted to pick out a couple to give an example what type of challenges you have. And one for me, I kind of knew going in, was about taking the lead of a team that, of course, had just had some management changes, and now a young woman is coming in and a big machine, so they're almost all men also in Belgium working in the company. I'm not an engineer, I don't have a technical background. There was already a trust issue locally, so, you know, if a foreigner comes in, you're not even Indian. And at one point I heard someone saying, we were driving in a car, and I was like, oh, but she's not married. And I thought, wait, what? What does that have to do with anything? So they just kept on putting on load, like making it really difficult to taking the lead. Also because it was a bit unstable balance as well, in the sense that I was acting general manager and I was the lead of the management team, but the sales director locally and the person who was responsible for service did report directly to Belgium. So it wasn't like I was their boss. So that's a bit of a weird switch that we all had to make. And so this was actually our management team. There was a fifth one in the beginning as well. And so we had a lot of fun, but there was a lot of, you know, setting boundaries and when does someone have the final word and everything. And I was very keen on keeping it in India, proving myself, but also having them prove themselves, because I was also there training them and helping them become a better management team, even, you know, when I leave again. So it was a bit, it was a lot of patience and building trust and focusing on communication. And I do remember my company coach was also all of our direct boss, who said, you know, you're more of a psychologist than anything else. And I said, well, sometimes you really need to be. Now, unfortunately, 3 quarters into my project, that same boss and company coach had to leave the company. And he was really a bit of the glue, keeping not just us together, but he was the global business development director, so he had a lot of links with the other subsidiaries as well. And that for me, I thought, it's fine. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 quarters. We can just continue. But you realize how much information is coming back from him to us. I thought I was always, you know, chatty-catty. But really, he also fed a lot of information to us. And that one was, for me, more important, chopping up my centipede that I had before. Really, okay, for marketing, I go there. For HR, I go there. And adjusting your expectations. You know, one thing you're doing this, and then all of a sudden you have to say, okay, now I do have to do that, and you make some changes to your project while you're at it. What is my takeaway from this whole project? I say next level self-awareness because, okay, you're learning new skills, you're improving skills, you get to know yourself, but that's kind of like the normal level of self-awareness I think that you get out of it. For me, it was also understanding myself better, understanding and appreciating my skills, and trusting that I can listen to myself. Say, if I have a gut feeling to do it like this or like that, that that's grounded and I can follow that, and it really makes you a lot more not just confident but also resilient. And you got this, I got this. And I have to say, this morning I was in a situation I couldn't have predicted it to be this morning, but I really thought, I'm so glad I already did Puff. You can really throw anything at me. I'm gonna be as cool as a cucumber, no problem. So that's really still helping me till this very day. And also a picture from a training session I give. For me, it was a very nice feeling doing this Puff project. It really felt like winning because you get a lot of things done, you accomplish a lot of things. And for me, the main thing was seeing my team motivated, seeing them empowered, and looking back and saying, I helped build that. That's really beautiful. And so that was my story. The question is, are you, like me, looking for something in an international scope in business and looking to own something, to really take leadership of something? Well, I would say, don't hesitate and go to the Puff application page.
We do questions later on, and okay. Good. Hello, everybody. My name is Piet, and I'll tell you tonight a bit about my experience with Puff and what I learned from it. Sorry, I sound a bit nasal. I was a bit high on the ibuprofen, so but I hope I'm clear enough for the time being. So I started Puff with a very clear plan in mind, but actually my whole adventure didn't go as planned. Actually, nothing at all. And if there's anything I learned from this experience is to adjust, it's to adapt. And in the next 15 minutes, I want to tell you about what I learned from Puff. First of all, I will start giving a bit of my background, very short, not too much in detail, but then you know a bit where I come from and what my interests are. Very short also on the project. I can talk hours, but also so you're a bit, so you have a bit of a framework. And then I try to keep it as short as possible. It's very hard, but I'll wrap it up in 3 struggles and 3 learnings I had during this project. A bit about myself. I'm a materials engineer. I also studied a little bit of economics next to that. I worked 6 years for Materialize, 3D printing tech company, together with Kristel. So that's where I also got to know what Puff is about. I tried to launch my own startup in sportswear, which failed miserably. But yeah, it was worth a try. I'm a sports and outdoor enthusiast. I really like to go out. Kind of a gear freak. I really like great consumer brands like the ones I put here on the slide that make cool stuff. So I like stuff, things that you can touch, that you can, nothing like software, but real things like this. Bit about the project. I went for BioRacer to Canada, in Montreal. BioRacer is a Belgian company that exists for 30 years, and they manufacture sportswear. So they're mostly known for cycling clothing. This is actually a picture of one of the athletes of the Belgian national team doing some wind tunnel testing, testing out a new aerodynamic suit. So that in short, then the scope of the project was to build a business structure in the USA. What does that mean? Well, the company, they launched. So first I have to say they were active in Europe only. So I manufacture in Europe for the European market. And 2 years before I arrived, they set up a sales office in Canada and a production facility in Colombia. And my job was to actually look at the US market and how we are going to launch there. So where should we set up office? How should we do it? With whom should we do it? How do we set up logistics and things like that? So quite a big scope. So now you have a bit of my background, a bit of an idea of the project. And now I want to talk about 3 struggles I had and 3 learnings. First struggle, just like many of you have heard before, it's really to find the project. So the struggle starts even before the project. And in my mind, I wanted to do something with a consumer brand. So I had quite a specific idea. This is actually a screenshot I took this week, looking into my OneNote or Evernote back then. about the companies I thought were interesting. So you could see here all the consumer brands that some of you might know. So I started contacting them and tried to, explain what PAF was about, explain what I wanted to do. And there was really few companies that kind of matched the criteria. Also, it had to be the right timing. They should have an international product. So it was kind of frustrating. And in the end, I got to find a really nice project. But my key takeaway for you here is actually the whole period of contacting those companies to talk with people working in those companies, just to figure out what you want to do is already a fantastic experience. Still today, I still have contact with a lot of people I talked to back then, unrelated to BioRacer. For example, I talked to the guy who founded Ambiorix shoes, the people from Cowboy Bikes, most of you know. They also did, I think they applied for a PAF project as well. But at the time, they weren't right for a move outside of Belgium, etc. So learning one is, if you just show up and you build your network, even though you don't really have the perfect project in the end, that's already worth a lot. Second struggle is do the project. So rewind January 2020, took the plane to Montreal, spent a few weeks there in the sales office, tried to understand how they were working, how they were organized. And after 1 month and a half, I took the plane to Colombia, to the production facility, to get to know the people there, to understand how they work, to understand how we would set up logistics, etc. Now we are 2 months down the road, and suddenly COVID struck. So it's spring 2020, a fantastic period for everybody of us. The company had to, the factory had to shut down. So end of project, I thought, but okay, called to the CEO, said, maybe you could stay there for a while. It's not going to be that bad. Maybe in a few weeks or months it's going to be over. So nobody knew how serious it was back then. So okay, I decided to stay, and I could. Actually, it wasn't too bad because I was in Medellin, Colombia, a fantastic, super cool city. And I was still in the same time zone of North America, so I could do some calls and still do some work. A few weeks later, so this is actually a picture of the company when it was closed. A few days later, my colleague and only friend, the managing director there, said like, I'm not gonna stay here in the city because there's gonna be a lockdown, but super strict lockdown, meaning you're not allowed to go out, only for grocery shopping. So I'm leaving. I don't want to stay in the city. I'm gonna go outside, rent a place, and if you want to come, you're welcome. I was like, okay, of course I'm gonna come because I don't know anybody here. So I joined him. This is Juan. This is a picture of us doing grocery shopping, going to the supermarket, loading the car for 3 weeks with food because we didn't know how long that would take. And so we went to this place. Looks really romantic, and it was in that small village that we rented a place, and we started working there for whatever we could do. He had 2 daughters. He was divorced, by the way, so that's why he was happy I could join. He had 2 daughters. A picture of me working there, and it's actually the perfect postcard. So at that time, I was still very happy. Fantastic experience. But after a couple of weeks, it became, to be honest, really shitty because the internet didn't work and I couldn't really do my project. So I became a bit frustrated. And then, long story short, I had to go back to Belgium 3 months later from the start of the project. This is also a story I can talk about for hours, but I was repatriated by the German army. It was the last plane back to Europe, so quite an experience as well. Anyway, back in Belgium, and then I really hit the floor. It was, back to start. Not much to do, and actually the company was not in a good shape. Like many companies, there was like a really standstill in the economy, and there was no sales, and I was actually really afraid of honestly losing the project and losing my job. So I had a talk with CEO, and he said, well, just do some marketing stuff for now, and maybe you can go back after a couple of weeks or months. So yeah, really low of the project, and I started to do some marketing stuff, literally adjusting some catalogs and things like that. A few months later, they fired the marketing manager because he was not doing a good job. And then suddenly CEO was standing next to me at my desk and said, hey, congratulations, you're the new marketing manager. And he said, yeah, it's going to be a tough year because there's Olympics coming up, and because we were working with the Belgian national team, there was a lot of marketing stuff to do around the Olympics. There was the World Championships of Leuven coming up, so suddenly I was a marketing manager of a really cool company in sportswear, things an industry that I really liked. And he said, yeah, start building your team because you'll need it. So suddenly I had to hire people, I had to build a team, I had to coach, I had to build a marketing strategy, things I've never done before, and was also not in the scope of my PAF project at all. These are some pictures of very cool campaigns that we did with Wout van Aert and dressing Manneke Pis during the World Championships in Leuven. So second learning, and that's, again, it's my key learning and main learning is nothing goes as planned. There's always going to be a change, could be major, it could be small, but as long as you can just adapt, adjust, and embrace the change that's happening and focus on the opportunity that it's at, you can learn a lot, and it will turn out in the end, in my case, very nice. But I am convinced that it's for everybody like that if you just embrace the change. Final struggle. So it cannot always go up. During that year, it was, so now I'm talking summer 2020, so the only thing you could do outside was walking, running, and cycling. So there was a huge bike boom with a lot of work, which is nice, but I didn't have much experience in managing a team, etc. And after a while, the company said, hey, we're going to go full gas again on the business development part. But I was still working on the marketing part. So, okay, we decided to go to PAF and look at maybe we can hire someone from the PAF just to continue your project again in Montreal. So that's where we were very happy to have Wim come on board. This is actually a picture of us enjoying ourselves at the World Championships cyclocross in Arkansas back then. It's also a cool anecdote. We have some time. This is actually the suit that we made for Wout van Aert. And for those cyclist enthusiasts who know, he didn't come to the World Championships, but we made the suit. So we said, okay, fuck it, we're gonna wear it and we're gonna cycle around the track right after the race. It was really fantastic, us in the Wout van Aert suit. Anyway, but we also launched a partnership with the Ineos Grenadiers cycling team. It was also a major accomplishment for the company in 30 years of history. But too many projects for me to do, and I was getting really frustrated. It was very hard for me to handle. Certainly had to coach someone, didn't do that before, also across the other side of the ocean. And it was the first time I was really having fights on the work floor, verbal fights. But first time I really had big issues with people I'm working with. Certainly one wasn't my best friend anymore because I was doing not enough for him to help him out in Colombia. The expert manager was pissed, etc. So too many projects, but it really forced me to change my way of working and to really let go. And that's why I say my third learning is I really had to learn how to trust other people to do their job, because initially you have the idea of I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna figure it out, and now you suddenly have to let other people do it and coach them. So I really learned to appreciate coaching people and let them do the work, which sounds nice, but it's pretty difficult. So to wrap up, how did it end? Well, I stayed at the company 3 years more. We did many cool stuff. I had a great time, really good connection with the team, with the CEO back in Belgium. I had the opportunity to work on an acquisition of another company. no experience at all, and thanks to Prince Albert Funds, I was able to do an M&A training because I received a McKinsey prize during my PAF project, which is another nice thing you can go for. And now switched jobs actually 2 months ago. I work in venture capital at Participatiemaatschappij Vlaanderen, which is a company that invests in young startups, scale-ups, and I'm actually the one responsible for consumer goods. So I'm happy to really invest in those companies that I think are super interesting. And next year I will also continue working with PAF. I will coach Stephanie, who will go with Pro Soccer Data to the US. Also a very nice company in an industry I love. So. To conclude, I had to find a nice and cheesy quote to end. So this is mine, but I'm not going to be too dramatic. I would say it's not my entire life, but my entire PAF project that can be described in one sentence. It didn't go as planned, but that's okay. And actually, it's even better. Now it's my quote. So if there's anything I want you to take away from my experience is that it doesn't matter if at the moment you have a very clear plan, or if you have a vague plan, vague idea of what you want to do, or no plan at all. Most plans, they don't go according to plan. But that's exactly the thing. It's just the whole experience, the things that you learn during the project, and even you'll see far after the project, there are so much things with the Prince Albert Fund that you can benefit from. And it's actually, it's one of those rare platforms that exist, Prince Albert Funds. You can really do almost anything. So I would say, if you have just a slight idea of doing something outside of what you're doing currently, then just apply and see what happens. Over time.
Thank you, Pete. No, thank you. That's okay. I don't know what time you are now, because no problem. Yeah, so you got a chance to hear Joke's and Pete's story. Thank you very much, guys, for sharing that with us. And there's many more stories on the website. If you want to get inspiration, if you want to know what they have done, you can check there. But I want to thank you very much for coming, and also thank you, Pete and Joke, for your time, all of the alumni. It was great seeing you here, and I really wish you best of luck with your applications. Just go for it. And yeah, make sure you don't miss your train. Okay, have a great evening. Thank you.